Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Art After Hours. I'm Shauna Robeson with Creating Space Postal, and in this video, I'm going to be introducing doodle art and how that can help you be mindful or be absent-minded or just relax, depending on what you want to do. There's different ways to doodle art. So please join me, and then at the end, I will be showing you how to create this little Zentangle inspired Zentangle. All right, if you're interested in seeing how, please join me. See you there. Okay, so what is doodling? If you're like me, you probably look back on all of your lecture notes from all ages and find doodles in the side of your notes. And at that time, when I was doing this, this is an example of actually, I was temporarily working for the census and I had to do all of these training modules on the computer. And to keep myself awake and engaged, believe it or not, I did these doodles. And you'll see shortly, I'll talk a little bit more about it, but that actually helped keep my creative side of my mind happy. So I could stay engaged in what was going on in front of me. And I know that seems, seems counterintuitive, but I'll explain a little bit more later. But what a doodle is defined by here, the Oxford Languages Dictionary, is scribbling absent-mindedly. And you'll notice, this one's a rough drawing made absent-mindedly. And the key thing here is absent-mindedly. So doodling is something that you just do. It's not something that you are real mindful about. It might be a side, kind of like a side gig that you're doing with something else. Now, another definition, which I like even more, is to make spontaneous marks with your mind and your body to help yourself think. And that's how I used doodling. And it goes by different names, but in this case, I used doodling to, like I said, keep my mind from completely shutting down and just going to sleep. It's like my computer turning off. It's like, so doing something, doing some doodling on the side helps me. And so doodling is just, probably is not hard to guess what it is. And we'll talk more about some different ways to doodle too. But so that's just a little bit of, a couple of definitions of how people see doodling. And why doodle is the question. Why do doodle art in the first place? Well, relaxation, which is what I could use right now, a reduction in cortisol or stress hormone. So studies have shown any meditative art does that, and doodling is one of those things that can really help us relax. Oftentimes we think of doing art, we feel like doing art when we're in more positive moods, but sometimes we need to do things like this type of relaxation art to help us regulate our mood, to relax, to feel better. So mood regulation is another one. And I think I coined the term. There's actually a software called Noodle, but I like the idea of Noodle being like mood doodling. And we're going to actually have possibly next week, we'll be talking about that, but that's going to be one of the weeks we're going to be focusing on mood doodling. So but it actually activates the reward pathways in our brain. It can help with memory recall. And this is what I was talking about before when I would be in lectures and, I have ADHD. So I need to, more stimulation on my brain to keep me engaged in things because I can get distracted with other things. So when I studied, I listened to music. I would listen to the just instrumental type music, classical music, and that would help me. When I'm in lecture, I found myself doodling, and that was a way that I could keep my creative side happy and then allow myself to stay engaged and focused. And you do have to be careful because if you go off on, fully a mindful doodle where you're actually now creating things, and doing art, you could get distracted. So there's a fine line. You just have to be careful. But if you're doing non-representational, things that are just patterns and that don't really, have as much meaning as more like an artwork would, that's going to be more relaxing, just repetitive. It's not taking your attention away from whatever the primary focus might be, but it's keeping you engaged and awake and alert. Self-expression, of course, anytime that we do something using our hand, using the dexterity of our hand, our eyes, we're combining our eye, brain, nervous system, and kinesthetics of our hand, we're actually going deeper into that subconscious, and we'll be able to connect, just like when we talked about with neurographic art. This is very, very similar. It has maybe a different focus sometimes when we're approaching it, but I mean, neurographic art is another type of doodle art. It's just a more mindful doodle art. So it can also, what we doodle, when we just let it go and don't really try to control what we're doing, when it's just really just more spontaneous, we can actually look at what we are doodling and get insight to our inner psyche and our personality and our state of mind and our mood. And like neurographic art from last month, doodling can help us problem solve. We're using our visual, written, kinesthetic, and emotional aspects of the mind. So we're opening up more of those neurons, getting them working, and we're able to come up with more solutions and be more creative about our solutions. Think outside the box, if you will. Now these came from this link here, which is in the notes. Now, two main types of doodling that I've mentioned or talked about is this. There's more of the spontaneous, and now you could say mindless or absent-minded, but your mind is still involved in the process on some level. So I don't really like to use mindless so much, as it's more spontaneous. We're not as conscious of what's going on, so more subconscious. There's no clear intention that's set when you're doing this type. Your focus may be shared, like if you're in a lecture or doing some other task that's more mundane or boring. It's more stream of subconscious, kind of like when you write in a journal and you're just doing what all the thoughts that come in your head. But when you're doing doodling, you're not really having to think, because you're not having to form the language of your thoughts. So that's helpful. Now, Jen, are we past the trolls? Are they gone? I think they are. Because I want to open up.
I'm not entirely sure. There may still be one here. Okay. But I don't want to remove them because I'm not
sure. Yeah, I don't see any names, but okay. So I will open it up at the end, and hopefully we've gotten rid of them. I think I still have a security where they can't change their name, and there were just the two that I saw, but just to be safe, I'm going to go ahead and leave. So I apologize, it's hard for you to chime in. And I think that I could open up the chat. So let me see if I can open up the chat.
That's cool, and then we can monitor.
Yeah, and then that way, if you have questions, you can put them in there, and then Jen, you can let me know if I need to address those.
Gotcha. I'll keep an eye on it.
Thank you. Okay. So, so a couple ideas for doing the spontaneous, like I said, stream of subconsciousness, just without any intention, just get your pen onto paper. You could even make it a single line that you don't lift from the page, and just keep going and see what kind of shapes and lines form. You can have your eyes closed and do it that way, or even use your non-dominant hand like we talked about in neurographic art. And then on the other side, you have more of the mindful doodling. And I use doodling as sort of the general umbrella term, and then I'm going to go into details of some of the, the focused type doodling, besides neurographic art, which we did last month. But with mindful, you do have a clear intention that is defined when you approach the process. And you can use it to process information. Maybe you're thinking about a particular event that you're trying to work through. Maybe you're trying to solve this particular problem or work on healing something specific. You can think of it as meditation. Now, Zentangle and Noodle are two arts that are designed specifically for kind of a meditative experience, which will help with mood regulation and relaxation as well. And I'm going to be introducing the Zentangle in a little bit. And you can also, no matter what types of doodling you're doing, you can build skill and aesthetics. So the skill, of course, is the hand-eye coordination, the dexterity. Anytime you, especially when you have the intention to create something, you're working, you're thinking what you want to do, and then your hand is doing it. And so you're creating that ability, that skill. And then the aesthetics development is that artistic eye, what looks good. So you're developing that too, what patterns look good together. So you're building those skills that are kind of a gateway to other types of arts, other drawing that you might do in art. So I love neurographic art. I love Zentangle or Tangle art, doodle art, whatever you prefer to call this type of art, is a way to build that skill that can lead to development of your skill working with other types of art forms, whether you're painting or actually doing, more formal drawing. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce you to Zentangle, and I want to start by saying that I am not a certified Zentangle instructor. So I'm just going to tell you, I'm touching just the tip of the iceberg. But if you want to really go a deep dive, then you can find Zentangle. There's actually certification. You can find Zentangle teachers, and I do, and I will give you a link where you can learn more about that. So first of all, this is the Doodle Arts playlist in case you didn't get that off my website. If you didn't, please do. And at the end, I'll go ahead and post those links. So help remind me to do that. But so the substrate is just what you're going to be working on, and that's any kind of paper or material will work fine. Now for Zentangle specifically, they actually have these tiles that they create, and you can purchase them online, and I'll give you the website. But they're 3.5 by 3.5. You can use any paper you want. You can even use bigger paper and then just create smaller squares on there if you want to follow the Zentangle guidelines. The point, I think, of the small size of the tiles, I think, is just because you want it to be a shorter session. Because if you have a whole 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, that is a big Zentangle, which could take hours to do. And a 3 by 5 by 3 by 5 is reasonable to do in one sitting. And the idea is that you go through this whole process in one sitting, and you can complete your artwork. The medium that you would use, there's pencil, eraser, which is kind of optional because some people don't like, in some circles I've heard they frown on doing any erasing in Zentangle. But I would suggest eraser. I use them. A blending tool, you can use a Q-tip if you don't have a tortillon or a shading stump or something else. And then I like I use the micron fine tip markers in a variety of sizes, because depending on the patterns that you're doing, it's sometimes you need a bold tip and sometimes you need a really fine tip to get into those little details. And then any coloring medium, depending on what it appeals to you, you just have to make sure that you have the right paper for the medium that you're using. Now, the paper that I'm going to be doing some demonstration on is this Nina Classic Crest Solar White cover stock, and it's 80. And I just wanted to tell you, because that's what I'm using, just so you, for the most part, just so you know. But the tiles that are created by the Zentangle people are a little bit rougher surface than this. This is a very smooth surface, but it works for a lot of different coloring methods that I like to use. So, and then, so that's primarily, you can really do it on Post-it notes if you want. So really, it doesn't have to be that complicated, but this is just some ideas of if you want to, work with it a little bit more. Now, it was developed in 2005 by Maria Thomas, who is a calligrapher, and Rick Roberts, a former Buddhist monk. And this is the website. You can go check out more from them. And they say, it's an easy to learn method of creating beautiful drawings, which is absolutely true. This is one of my first that I did in, I think it was like 2015. And so this is this is just one example of a Zentangle tile. And the focus is on the process, not the quality of product. So it's more focused on fun, relaxation, mindfulness. And the goal is to get you out of your head and into the creative process stress-free. So because some people just have a really hard time starting anything because there's a lot of like, okay, what am I going to be doing? This is basically a stepwise process that just helps guide you through the creative process. So you don't have to think about what to do next. You'll just be guided through it. And so it takes away a lot of the, oh, I have to figure out what my next step is, or, you know, I don't know what to do, and just kind of leads you through it. And I think that's a big part of what it's about, is just helping take any kind of stress out of creating. Now, the guiding principles include focus on process, not results, like I mentioned. There are no mistakes, and that's why some people say don't use an eraser, but there's just portions of it that I would use the eraser for and portions that I would not. There's no right or wrong to draw a tangle, and a tangle is just a pattern, and we'll be going over that a little bit more shortly, but just like a doodle pattern. And designs are abstract, not representational. Say that 5 times fast. Representational, meaning that when you look at this example of a Zentangle here, you can't say, oh, that looks like a fish or a tree, or, you know, it's not trying to be anything specific. Now, maybe it ends up looking like something, but the goal is never to look like something, so that you can't go, oh, mine doesn't look like that. Mine doesn't look like a fish, or doesn't look like a horse, or whatever I'm trying to do. When you have a goal and when you're trying to make it look like something, that's going to add to the anxiety. That's going to add to that judgmental mind of, oh, it's not looking like it's supposed to. So the least amount of expectations that you can have moving into it, the less stress it's going to be. There's no up or down, at least not in the working process. At the end, you might decide which is up or down. And then you know, because based on where you put your initials, but really during the process, there's no up or down. And observe, but let go of the judgmental and critical thoughts that come up. It's good for us to be aware that they're happening, but then just let it go and don't hold on to that, and don't be judgmental of having those thoughts. And most of all, enjoy the process. And I'm going to be doing the demos of this live after this presentation, but I just want to walk you through it. That way, if you want to follow along, if you do get the notes, you'll be able to have a stepwise process. So step 1 is really putting yourself into that place, that state of mind, of gratitude. Take a deep breath, you know, in and out slowly, and just set your intention to gratitude. Like, come at this with, I'm thankful for having these tools, these toys that I call my stash, my art stash. I'm thankful for having this time that I can do this. I'm thankful for having the ability to do any drawing whatsoever. So, and have the opportunity to play with these tools. So it's always good to sort of clear your heart from whatever happened throughout the day earlier, and then just really direct your attention to this. And that's that mindful approach. Now, on the 3x5 by 3x5 tile, the first step of actually doing this, the art part of it, is to use a pencil and just put little dots at each corner of the tile. And they're roughly about a pencil width from the corner, but really, you know, it's not exact. It's just stick a dot there. And this is going to actually help this is sort of like the border of your design. So this is like the border of a photograph, or what you might have for a painting. You're just putting these dots to represent that. And just use the pencil lightly, because these are things that you would erase later on if you're going to join me in erasing things. The next step, also using a pencil, is to go ahead and connect those corner dots with a line. Now, the line can be straight or curved or squiggly or loopy. It can be really anything. You're just creating, again, the border of the design. And you don't have to have any rules about what to do. Just pick how you want to do it and connect the dots. The next step is to create the string. Now, a string is just a loose design that divides up the basically the area of your art into sections. And you can do this in any way. Now, what I did here is I actually used my initials, S and R, to divide up the space. So I created a big S that went from one side of the border to, and then I curved it around and it ended at another section. And then I wrote in the R the same way. It's kind of like what we talked about in the neurographic art, where you go from one edge of the paper to the other. You're just going to go from one border point to some other border point. And you can do as many segments as you want. Just know that the more you do, the more complicated the project will be. So the fewer divisions, the easier it'll be. Now, they can go beyond the border. They can go within the border. They don't have to touch the border. This is just, you know, as you start to get to know the options, you can go and really use your creative license to do anything with any of these steps. But these are just a general guide. And then if you want to see some ideas for string patterns, if you don't want to create your own, you can go to this link here, and I'll be actually visiting these pages afterwards and showing you some, giving you a little tour of some of my favorite resources. So tanglepatterns.com has pre-designed strings that you can use. The next step is to tangle. Within each of those sections that you made with the string, you're going to do a different design. So when you look at this design, you can see like this was that little teardrop shape. There's a couple little loops like that. And so every time I got to a border, I just changed whatever pattern it was that I was using to a new pattern. So for each of those sections, you just create a tangle. Now, the tangles can be as simple as just circles, or you can do dots or little snowflakey shapes. It doesn't have to be complicated. But I will also give you guys a tour of a couple of my favorite resources. They can get quite complex too. So I will show you where you can find some tangle ideas and learn how to do more complex patterns. But you can create your own. You can just make little stars and squares and circles and little lines. It doesn't have to be anything particular. There's also an app for your phone called Doodle Patterns, and you can find some different patterns there as well. And each of these places will show you step by step how to create that pattern. So for example, this is one pattern here, all along here. This is just little circles in this section here. And this is just one spiral. So you can learn how to create any and all that have been established, that are pre-established patterns that are out there. And if you search Pinterest for you know, tangle patterns or doodle patterns, you're going to find lots of choices. Here's an example of a variety of patterns that I've done. Now, in the workshop notes that I have online that you can purchase, I do have a template for this catalog. I actually go in and just like to practice each of these ahead of time. So I'll go to these resources that I love, and one by one, in order, alphabetical, whatever's available at the time, I just go in and create the patterns, whatever's next on the list. Now, every time I go back, there's new patterns. And so I'm always adding more and more to the end of this. I have over 300 patterns that I've done. But this way I can go to my patterns that I've already practiced and see from my own catalog what I might want to use on a project that I'm working on. Now, the next step is to embellish. So you can erase any pencil marks that you don't want. If you don't want to keep those corner dots or any of the lines that break up the pattern that you made with the string, you can erase that at this time and then start doing the shading. I made the mistake one time of doing my shading with pencil, and then I realized, oh, I didn't erase the lines, and then you go to erase the lines, and of course you're erasing all your shading. So I don't recommend that route. If you've forgotten to erase them ahead of time, just leave them there. A lot of people, like I said, don't erase any of the pencil from the start of, from the string or the border or any of those. So it's up to you, whatever you prefer. This is the place where you can really add your own creative intuition, your artistic eye, build that aesthetics, what looks good to you. By adding some shading, you can create some 3D shapes, turning this from just something that's flat into maybe like a cone or something like that. It's really rounded. Just make sure I'm not. I think you would just come in, Jen. You're not sending me messages, right? Okay, I want to make sure I'm not missing. Okay, so, and then of course you can add color if you want the whole thing in color. You can add maybe a color around the outside if you want, or any way that you want. Let, you know, just color as your heart desires. Let your intuition guide you in where you want to go with it. And then at the end, celebrate. Rotate the image around because you'll notice that it looks different on one orientation than it does in the other. So if we look back at this, just rotating this around is going to give you a completely different look. So rotate it around, see which way you want to finally be up, if you want to have an up, and then go ahead and add your initials on there. And you can write on the back of these tiles, if you're using tiles, you can write the date, you can write what inspired you, you could write what emotions came up, you could write what ideas came up, maybe solutions that you came up with that you were thinking about if you were trying to work out a problem while you were working on this. So those things can go on the back of the tile if you want. I also like to do little inspirational quotes on the back. So make a little inspirational deck out of these types of tiles. So whatever you want to do. Okay, then beyond Zentangle, and these are just some search terms. If you want to look at art that's created out there, you can search Zentangle inspired art, Tangle art, Doodle art. I recently came across something that they said Zentangle, which is using a stencil. And here's an example of that. I used this starfish stencil to create my base shape as my string, and then or kind of actually really as my border. And then I did, I kind of created my own shapes inside. So you can do that. You can just go into themes if you want. This was an underwater theme. And some of these patterns were ones that I found in this particular book that I'll share after the presentation. And then some were just, oh, okay, what's the pattern that I might find underwater? And some of them I created myself, and some of them I was able to find, and some of them I just looked at some of the catalog that I have and said, oh, that looks like something I might find underwater, and I would use it. So this is an example. These two are of ones that I just did my own drawing. I didn't use a stencil. I just did my own drawing, but then I used patterns that made sense for what I was working on. These were actual patterns that are already existing that reminded me of a snake, snake scales, for example. And so I just found patterns and created the shapes that worked for whatever project I was doing. So when you take it beyond the process of Zentangle, anything goes. You can, you're not doing the steps, but you're still using these tangles to create other art. And then once you move past that, you can find that in nature, there's a lot of these patterns that exist. And when you start getting into realism in your artwork, you may be using some of these patterns. Like this, for example, this looks a lot like the belly of a snake. So I might use that pattern if I was creating a realistic snake. None of these are designed to be too realistic. They're more whimsical, but I can see that some of these patterns would make a really good pattern to use if I was doing more realism. So like I said, it's a gateway to developing your skill, to moving into all different directions that you might want to do in your drawing. All right, and I will be putting these links up in the chat, but creatingspacepostal.com is where you can find a copy of these notes and also the templates of doing those catalogs. If you're interested in those, you should see my workstation. And this is the example, and this was one that I just did today for the presentation. And I don't remember which orientation I had it on in the presentation. Let me zoom in. But let me just show you what I was talking about. So if I rotate this, it just has a different feel to it. Oh, I think I like that orientation. So depending on which direction I have it, it has a different feel to it. And so that's the fun thing about, this type of doodle art is that, sometimes at the end, it looks like something that you didn't have in mind. There was one that I think it ended up looking kind of like an angel, but I wasn't trying to make anything. So, yeah, I kind of like that orientation actually, because it has the flower and then leaves coming up almost like a garden. So that's probably going to be my orientation up. And then I can add my little initials if I want. And then 2022. It's a good idea to put the date on it because it's good to see your progress as you go along. Okay, so now let's do one. I wanted to show you some of these are original Zentangle tiles. So you'll notice they have actually the Zentangle logo on the back. And there's even little lines for writing information about whatever it is. But it feels like nice paper. It's a little rougher than, like I said, what I'm going to be using. It's got a nice texture, which is hard to show. But it has these nice edges that are kind of like a rough edge, which is cool. And then this is another example. They have this color. I did a theme one that was like party and celebration theme. So they have this color, and then they also have black. Now, this was in another kit, but I don't know if it's officially Zentangle because I think you can get generic tangling kits and stuff like that. So, and they have this rounded edges. This one's not quite as round. And so what I've done is I actually just got a corner clipper or like a corner die cut, and I just can clip the corners of regular pages if I want it to look a little bit more like an official tile. So you can do something like that if you want. Or you can just cut them down to 3.5 by 3.5 or any size, really. The cool thing about this size is that they do sell, if you're interested in going down the rabbit hole of this, they do actually sell these page protectors for organizing them. And so they fit that size. So that's one of the benefits of having that size. But you can always glue them into a journal, or you can, inside a bigger journal, just put some tape or lines and just create the smaller sections within your journal, if that makes sense. Just define the space in your journal page on a bigger page in whatever way you want to do that. Okay, I wanted to show you my catalog also. So basically this starts with number names, and I do it by alphabetical, by name. And the cool thing about the fact that people that are creating these patterns are creating names for them is that if you search a name, like let's say you want to do something with this 8SB in it, you can search that name and see what variations or what other people have done with it, because everybody's always making different variations. In fact, these 4 are all variations of the same theme. So you'll find one pattern and you can search for it, and then you'll see lots of ways people have used it, or you'll see other variations of how they've done it differently. So that's kind of fun. And so I just go through, and it's fun, like at night, bedtime, I'll go through and just, oh, what's the next one on the list? and I'll put it in my catalog, and it's a way that I practice it, and then I can pick from my own catalog when I'm ready to actually do a project. So let me show you guys. I should have done this before I wanted to show you the web pages. Well, before I do that, here's the current page that I'm working on. So I'm going to be filling up this catalog with different designs. I did want to show you a couple books that I really enjoyed. This one is my first Zentangle book, and it doesn't really use much of the step-by-step process that they do. It's more about the patterns, but what they have in here is exercises. So they'll have a design, and then they'll have a blank space for you to practice the patterns. So this, for example, is in the book. These are in the book, and then these were blank, and I did these myself. So this is my example. And so this is from the book, and then this is my example. So these are blank spots in the book. So it has several pages of that, and it even has different border patterns. And this book is by several different artists, so it has different types of designs in it, which is fun, different exercises. This one was creating an animal. We're going to do something like that. Like, this is my weird animal that I've created. They have different themes like gardens and all sorts of fun exercises. So this has been one of my most fun books that I've worked with. I haven't worked with a lot of books, but I loved working with the underwater theme. So that gives some ideas of what to do. And then I just went from there and I built on from there. So in the end, they have, I haven't gotten even that far in this. There's so many, but at the end, there's even some, where is that? Where is it? Sorry. I should have had it page marked. They have some mandala, Zentangle mandalas, and that's next month's topic. So we'll probably do something like that. And then where did the fairy go? Oh, there, look at that. So now you're taking those patterns and just stepping it up a complete notch into these beautiful, you know, kind of a mix of realism and fantasy. So you can do a lot from starting off with this type of thing.
Can you get the book on Amazon, Shauna?
Yes, and it's called The Art of Zentangle. 50 inspiring drawings, designs, and ideas for the meditative artist. And I just think it's a really great starter book.
Can you show the cover again?
Yeah. And when I do my YouTube, when I do the video online, I'll put a link to this on Amazon or wherever I find it. But I'm pretty sure they have it there. So that's one of them. And then another one that I haven't used as much yet, but that I want to try to do it someday is just one Zentangle a day. So it has just a little exercise. And one exercise that I thought would be fun for us to start with is, and I don't know that this is necessarily an exercise that they have, but the creators of this, but you can see it's got lots of different patterns. Now, many of these patterns are online where I'm going to show you. So, you know, a lot of the books have that. They have practice spaces to practice the patterns too. But I feel like the online is more extensive. But one cool thing that they have is a practice on doing your initials. So it's sort of like making a pattern. Here, let me zoom in a little bit. Making a pattern with your initials. So try some different things with your initials that you'll be using once you create your tangles. Then you can use that funky, fun initials on your tangles. But it's also almost like a pattern too that you could use if you picked one of these symbols. Like that would be a cool reoccurring pattern. So So that's a fun exercise to do. And it can be a little intimidating when you see a whole project, but when you see how to break down each pattern one by one, it's not so overwhelming. So don't be intimidated by seeing some of these more complex designs. Sometimes the ones that look really complex are just not as difficult as they look once you've seen the process broken down. So let me take you off the live screen for just a minute because I want to show you these resources online. So this is what it looks like when I open the app. And I can select on any of these patterns that's there. It's a limited options. I mean, there's plenty, but not as much as, you know, online. But I can either pick something that I like, or I can hit random. And if I hit random, it'll pop up whatever random one it is. This one's called Knight's Bridge. And then if I hit play, it'll show me step by step how to do it. And I can hit back and it'll stop on that step. Now this was a pretty easy one, but let's do another one. This one's a little more complicated. Actually, that looks like the one I did for my snake. So it'll show me all the steps, and I can stop on any step I want just by backing up to the step. And then I can have that to look at.
What's the name of the app again?
This one is called Doodle Patterns.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's nice because I can be out and about. Now, obviously nowadays we have internet service and I can go to any of my other favorite websites too, but this is just handy to have right there with me. I can, you know, do a Zentangle anywhere I am. And, you know, it's nice because if you're traveling on the plane, it doesn't take a lot of space. You don't have to even use marker if you don't want to. You can simply just do it in pencil. The reason that they want you to do it in the marker is because they want you not to focus on the quality of it, and they don't want you to erase it. So, but you can use a ballpoint pen it doesn't matter. I mean, you can do it on a napkin with a ballpoint pen. Really, you can kind of follow the guidelines on anything. But the idea of using a marker or using a pen, something that's not erasable, is because they don't want you to focus on, oh, I didn't get that line right, or I messed up that particular shape, or, you know, they want you to observe it and move on and keep going with it and not get caught in the erasing. Now, you know, if you're doing a piece of artwork, if you're doing a Zentangle inspired art, you may want to do some of the complex tangles in pencil first and then go over them with marker, because now you're not doing it as the therapeutic side. You're not doing Zentangle, you're just doing Zentangle inspired art, and you are concerned about how it's going to turn out. Maybe you're making a piece for somebody, or thank you, Jen. I have two of them, and there's also Tangle List, but let me show you those. Let me share my screen and I'll give you a little tour of my favorites. Okay, so this is Tangle List. And if you click on, well, you'll notice a couple different things. You'll see guides. So I think this is, oh, no, that's not what I thought it was going to be. So let's start with the list of official tangles. So for this one, it goes in alphabetical order. And you'll see there's different choices of where you can find the resource to get the step outs. And they're called step outs, the instructions on how to make them. Sometimes they're a video, sometimes they're just a link to another website, because different people create these and post them. So I'm going to click on that, and that's going to take me to this website, and then it shows all of the steps to create that particular tangle. Okay, so that's an example of how to do that one. And then it takes me to a new, it's taking me to Tickled to Tangle blogspot. So that's just a link that goes to wherever it is that they have have the step out on. So these go to lots of different options. Again, there's some of them are YouTube. I like when they're still, because I don't, have to rewind through the YouTube. But if you want to actually see somebody step it out doing it and watch each pen movement, you can do that through this. So this is a great resource. And then if you go here to this random tangle generator, it'll actually pop one in for you. So doodah. Okay, so it's telling me which one to do. Click here for step outs. Oh, I thought it would take you directly to doodah. So now what I can do is I can search for that particular tangle name if it's not in my catalog. Doodah. So I just searched the name and then here's the step out. And I can see what doodah is. And there it is. So this is a great resource. The other one that I really like, let me see if there's anything else on that one that I want to show you. Okay.
Shauna, what is that website?
This one is tanglelist.com.
Okay, thank you.
And let me.
I put the web link in the chat.
Okay, did you put both of these or just which one did you put in there?
Tangle List.
Okay, and then the next one, this one, tanglepatterns.com. Let me put that in.
I think Judy put it in already.
Oh, okay, they're both in there. Great. So this one, you can pick whichever letter. So if you're searching for a specific one, you can just let's say I want to start in order. So I'm going to start with 0 to 9. So these are all titled with like, numbers. And so I can click on that and then it'll have information about the origination of the pattern. And sometimes there's a step out right in that link, or there might be another link that you'll find there to go to. So it'll show you. And then they even sometimes have variations that they show. The other thing you can go to find here, which I think they might have on the other one, but I think I always do that here, is you can actually go to strings and then it'll go through the steps of, different string patterns. So if I click on here, this is string pattern 001. And I have actually purchased, they actually sell like volumes of string patterns. I think I purchased one when I was first starting to do it. But you can look through here, you can see there's 3, 4, 5. So they have a bunch of different string patterns that you can choose from. And you just click on one and then it shows you, gives you an idea to do. So if you don't want to have to think about it, you could just select a number between 1 and 50 and go see what that string is. And I don't know if this one has, I think this has a random, oh yeah, tangles by type, tangles by artist. Here's a random number generator you can, create here. So if you want to pick from your own catalog, you can use this as a number generator. So if I want to pick a tangle, or a string, let's say I'm going to say minimum of 1, maximum of 50, and then I'm going to generate a number. And it's 47. So now I can go to, if I go to strings, I can just go down to number 47, whichever page that's on. And I can do this string. So I can let it pick, I call it letting the universe decide. That's only if you either don't have the energy, it's intimidating to think about it, and you just want it to all be decided for you. You just want to do some creating and you don't want to think about it. You can use these tools to help you. You can also choose tangles here, which is one of the things I like about this site, by the type of tangle it is, because there's a variety of types. So let's say I want something, because I'm doing a diamond theme, and I want something to be diamond shaped. I can click on diamonds and it's going to show me a bunch of choices that have a diamond shape to it. So if I know kind of what I'm looking for, but I'm not sure which one, but I just want to get some ideas, I can actually go here and search by a type. Maybe I want something that's more round. You know, maybe I'm like, oh, these are all hard edges and I really need something curvy, but I'm not sure what to do. I can just go here and look for orbs. It has orbs. I was going to see if it had circles. Oh yeah, circles. So I can go here and select circles, and then it's going to show me a bunch of patterns that include circles. Okay, so that's one of the, I think, extra things that this has that the other one, I don't know if it has something like that. But as you can see, there's a gazillion different types of patterns out there. There's never a shortage of options, but you don't have to do these. You don't have to do these, but they're fun to learn. I think they're really fun to just go one at a time in order of what they're here. You know, I think I used the other one to do my, like, just follow the order of those in. But now if I want to keep doing them, I can just go here and say, oh, is there anything new that I don't have in my catalog? I can go in order and see if there's anything that's here that I don't have, and I can put that in my catalog. Or I don't have to make a catalog at all. I could just go here every time. I like doing the catalog because it helps me practice the patterns without doing necessarily a project. And I can see how, oh, how easy is that? I don't always want to do, I don't always want to do that when I'm in the middle of creating something. I want to kind of practice ahead of time. So anyway, those are a couple of my favorite resources. Now let's, oh, we're already at 8:26. Okay, so let's do one example live before we. And for starters, I'm just going to go ahead and put a little dot near the corner of each corner. And it's roughly a pencil width, but I mean, really, it doesn't matter. Just kind of somewhere near the corner. And now to create my border, I'm just going to connect those dots just randomly. Maybe I just want a little wiggly line. And that creates more interest in the shape. And then I'm going to do my string. And I'm just going to do something random. Maybe I'll do some zigzag. Kind of like an N. Try out your initials if you want. And then I want something a little curvy. So I'm just going to make a little loop. Okay. So now I have all of these different sections to work with. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 patterns. Now I don't have to have a different pattern in each of these. If I decide, okay, I want this whole shape to be one tangle, that's my prerogative. Do whatever you want. It's just that's what they recommend, but anything can be modified for you. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and go to I think I'm going to use the Tangle List because I like the random. Actually, you know what I'm going to do, since we can do it right here on my phone, I'm going to do it from this Doodle Patterns. I'm going to hit. We'll do this together. Here. Okay, I'm going to do, this one's called drooping. And I'm going to, now this is a pattern that takes up a good space. So I want to pick something, maybe I'll make that, pick your section that you want to do it in. I think I'm going to make that in here. It's kind of a roundy space. It's either here or here. This one is a little bit bigger. Let me do it here. Okay, so now I know where I'm going to put it. And now I'm going to move to my marker, not my pencil. And I'm going to hit play just to kind of see what's going on. So that's the steps, but it goes really fast, but I can just back right up and go to the beginning. So the beginning, I'm going to make a bunch of lines. So let's say this is my center. I'm just going to make a bunch of lines that go through that center. They don't have to be perfect. Nothing has to be perfect here. And it looks like it's an X and then a T, basically. All right, there's my first step. Now I'm just going to basically put a border, so create V's that give a little bit of space between those lines, those crisscross lines, and the shape that I'm making in between them. So I'm just basically making a V that follows that line in each of these segments. Now, the nice thing about this size, the tile, is you can rotate it as you need to. Sometimes with bigger projects, it's hard to do that. And I'm using my 03 is the size that I'm using. It's not the smallest, but it's fairly small because I don't have a lot of space. Now you could even use if you're using bigger paper, you could use the extra fine Sharpie, but just know that this is a pretty thick compared to some of these fine tips. See how small that is? I just want you guys to get an idea. This is the extra fine Sharpie. And look at how much bigger that is. So that allows me to, and this isn't even the smallest. And this is more like one of the bigger sizes in the micron set. So it does make a big difference using a smaller tip.
What size?
This one's an 03. And that translates, and it's just called an 03, but it's a 0.35 millimeter is the actual size. And I always put tape, I put a label on it because I can't, this gets worn down where it shows the size and my eyeballs aren't so great. So I like to know what I'm grabbing. So if you've got mature eyeballs like mine, I do recommend, labeling them in a way that you can see them and grab them easy. Okay, so that's that step. All right, now I'm just going to hit the little arrow and it's going to take me to the very next step. So all I'm doing is creating a couple arcs, like 2 sets of arcs that are aligned next to each other. Now I don't have a lot of space, so I may only be able, in many of these, I may only be able to do 1 set of arcs, but I'm going to just do an arc, and then a little bit away, I'm going to do another arc. And then right on the other side of this line, I'm just going to create another set of arcs. I'm going to do my first rung of the arcs first. And then I'll do the second tier where I have space. I'm working on a silicone mat and it sticks to the.
Is that an 03?
This is an 03, yes.
Thanks.
Yes. All right, and then wherever I have space, like these bigger areas, I'm just going to continue that pattern as much as I can. Now I can't maybe do the whole thing because there's not space, but I'm gonna do as much of it as I can. So here, I'm just gonna end right at the border. I'm just gonna make a little bit like it's going off the edge. All right, so there's that second step, or that step, I should say, the third step. Okay, now I'm going to hit my the little arrow, and now I'm just gonna do these radiating lines. It's like, yeah, a few lines in the center, just radiating lines out from in between the arcs from the center. Now this might be where I might switch actually to a finer marker because it's really tight in that space. I have an 01. So this is an example of when you might need to change up your size. And why it's handy to have a set. Because it does make a big difference. I'm just trying to flick it out so it looks real organic coming out of the center.
Excuse me, but who makes that set of pens?
This one is, I think it's let me double check. It is made by, I want to be sure I'm saying it correct. Yeah, Sakura is the brand, but it's Micron is what they're called, Micron. And then this is the size, so Micron 01, for example.
How do
And
you
they do
spell the name of the company?
Sorry?
How do you spell the name of the company?
Oh, it's Sakura is SAKURA.
Okay, thank you.
And that's out of Japan. And then but you know, it's
It says Pigma Micron.
Pigma Micron. So Sakura, Pigma, Micron.
Cool.
And they do come and you can get them in a set with multiple tips.
Yeah, I see them right now. It's like there's like an 8-pack and a 10-pack.
Right. And sometimes they're different colors. You know, you'll find once you start doing it that there'll be certain sizes that you use a lot more than others. And then I would recommend buying like like I buy a whole pack of the 01s, for example. This is the smallest one I have is the 005. This is the smallest I have. And I mean, you can barely see that there's a tip.
Yeah, I don't have a set like that. Those are nice.
Yeah, they're really handy if you're doing any kind of detail drawing. And they have different brands that carry the same size tips, but I've been very happy with this particular brand.
All right, thank you.
You are
Are they
welcome.
waterproof? Are they waterproof? I
Yes.
forgot.
These
Okay.
are permanent. Yep.
Oh, that's even better.
Waterproof and fade proof. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you can even put some watercolor down and then Zentangle or do your flowers first and then right over it with watercolor, and it makes a beautiful flower.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these are, like I said, there are different brands that make these fine liners. Do make sure if you're going to be doing any kind of wet color, though, that you do make sure that it is permanent ink, because not all of them are. And so just make sure that you double check that, because then it's very disappointing when you start using the watercolors and it starts bleeding. Sometimes it's you want that. It's fun, but oftentimes not. So it's good to know. Like India ink is a permanent ink, but a lot of markers are not permanent. So, and a lot of the ink for calligraphy is not. So you have to make sure like that you're using India ink or something that is a permanent. Okay. All right, now let's look at the next step. Get this in focus. Okay, now I'm just going to be basically splitting these arcs in half with a solid So I'm just going to fill in half of those arcs with color. And for that, I'm going to go back to a little bigger. I might even go to my 5. It's going to be too big. You want to use the smallest one you can get away with, because you can get more detail with it. When you're filling in though, it'll take you forever if you're using a small one. So I'm just going to basically draw a line in the middle of the arc and then fill in. Now, if you're filling in, you can always change your lines. Maybe I want to bring this down a little bit. So it gives you, whenever you're filling it in, you can always adjust. It gives you a little bit more leeway for correction if you felt like, oh, that really didn't line up the way I wanted it, or whatever. And if you're doing your own thing and you make what you call a mistake, you could always just fill in the whole shape. I mean, it's really up to you. This is just a guide. Any of these that I'm doing is just a guide, and you can always make your own variation. I always say, use that creative license. You guys probably get tired of me saying that, but it's important because it's important to have freedom in creating so you can use your intuition. I mean, these guides are to help you, but if you feel like they're hindering you, go your own way. All right, so I got that stuff. And it's done. So step by step, I mean, when you looked at that at the beginning, you were probably feeling a little overwhelmed. I know I was. And then it's like, oh, that's not so bad if I break it down into steps. And that's just true of all of these. Okay, let's do another rando. That's pretty. Let's do that one here. Okay, watch the show. Boom. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the beginning and just create a little curvy. Oops. Probably don't want this big of a line. I'm going to go to a smaller one. Next step is to just continue those and then gradually make them shorter. I can tell you just from my early days of doing Zentangle, because drawing isn't my strongest suit. I mean, I can do drawing, and I'm much better than I was because of my practice with these types of doodle drawing. But I'm slow. I have to take my time to really. But I definitely can tell that I've built up dexterity and even strength, because actually drawing can you can feel your hands get stronger. It takes muscle to do. Okay, so now I love how they use different colors too for the next step. I'm going to basically go to from the top of these little dots, and then just create a little S curve, kind of like a reverse S, to the bottom side of the other dot. So top side of one, create a little bit of a curve to the bottom of the other.
What was the name of this one again?
This one is called Angelfish.
Angelfish.
Yeah,
Cool.
there you can see a little bit better. Kind of reminds me of like a peacock feathers or a shell. Now, I didn't come, you'll see my variation. I didn't really bring my points down to the center like this was, but that's one of those things where it's like, oh, well, it is what it is. I'm just going to let it go. This is my variation of it. And sometimes you might end up liking your own variation, your happy accidents, as I call them. Sometimes they're happier than others. Okay. And then that's it. That's the whole thing. That was easy. Okay. Let's see what the next one is. And I mean, that would be, I mean, this is called angelfish, but that would be a really pretty fin, like on a fish or something like that, or underwater plants. I mean, I could see a lot of ideas, or hair, use that for hair. There's a lot of ways they could use that pattern. Okay, let's have another one. Okay, this one's called Cadent. And let's see how that one's made. All right, let's start back at the beginning. Just a bunch of squares. Okay, let's see. Where am I going to put that? I'm going to, maybe I'll put that right in this little area here. Okay, so I'm starting off with just squares. Now they're in a pattern like a grid. And I don't have a square shape, so I'm just going to basically imagine where I don't have anything, like something's happening here, so my line is here. I'm just going to put a square down there. Do your best. Okay. What I want to do, maybe off there, and then that one's off the page. Okay, next, I'm just going to go from the top of, oops, sorry about that. I'm going to go from the top of the square. I'm going to make a little S curve, and you'll start to find that a lot of these, there are really just a minimal amount of shapes, and I'm going to be going through that next week. I'm going to talk about the basic shapes that you tend to be drawing. It's just variations of the same shapes, but so it's an S curve and a square. So this one's like a reverse S square from the top of one box going horizontal to the bottom of the next box. So here and then to there. And you know, if you're flying, if you're in a plane, not flying the plane, but if you're riding in a plane, this isn't one of those things you would multitask while you're flying a plane, but I don't think. But if you're riding in a plane and you need to relax, this is a great exercise to help you. It's also great when you're trying to fall asleep and you can't, your mind's going, you just get up and do a little doodle. All right, now we're going to be doing basically the same thing, a reverse S curve from the top square to the bottom square. Okay, I'm going to imagine, let's start with this one because it's actually there. So this one kind of disappears, so I'm just going to go to the edge. This one edge, this go off the edge. Just make sure your patterns go off the edge to make it look more realistic. I don't know, realistic's not the right word, but to complete the pattern. This is almost like an apple pie, like the top of a pie or a basket. Many of these patterns that people created came from something they saw in nature, or maybe they saw a pattern that they liked in their environment and they said, oh, I want to make a pattern like that. I mean, you can even look at patterns on clothing or just, you know, animal prints and find some fun patterns that you can use. Okay, and next. All right, and that's it. Yeah, so that would make a great basket weave, or could be kind of some kind of dragon scales maybe, or lots of ways to use that one. All right, that one's called Cadent. Let's pick another one. This one's called Rail. Rail, R-A-I, I think that's an L or an F. It's either Rafe or Rail. Let's see. I'm gonna let you guys see that. I think it could be Rafe. R-A-I-F or L-E. Not sure. Let's see how to make it. This would be good for tiles, or kind of looks like cells of the body. All right, and I'm gonna put that one over. I'm gonna, now because it's kind of geometrical, it's got square shapes, I don't want it right up against my other square shape. So I'm gonna just move it off, as you know, farther away from it, just to balance it out. So that's just one way to think about your patterns, trying to keep them contrasting next to each other. All right, so the first one is just to create these kind of loose rectangular tiles, just random rectangles, different sizes, kind of like cobblestone, but round. I mean, but not round, cobblestone, but square. All right. And then you just fill them in, just following the shape of the outside, but leaving a border. You just fill in the center. Now I'm going to move again to my 5. I might even want to go to my 8. So the 8 is my biggest one. Sometimes, and I think that one's similar to the extra fine. Sometimes I actually do use my Sharpie. I'm just going to follow the shape. This might even be too big, actually. Because the one thing is, depending on the paper you're using, it can also bleed more. If the bigger it is, it's going to have more ink that's putting down. So if it has any propensity for bleeding, it's going to bleed more if you use a bigger tip. So I'm going to use the 5. That's my next size down. It's a little bit more controllable for the space. If I'm doing a lot of space, then I would use the 8. Or even sometimes I'll use a brush pen. I'm realizing I need to go a little bit. I don't mind staying a little later, but I know it gets late for some of you guys, so. I want to have time for show and tell. Oh my gosh, we're already at 9. Sorry, you guys. I'm gonna move faster. And maybe I'll just work on, like, we can do show and tell, and then I could stay and finish if you want to stay, but I want to show you guys how to do some of the shading before. So maybe I'll just do some shading on what I already have. All right, I'm gonna, I'll do that. I'm gonna do a little bit of shading, and then I will pause for show and tell, and then I'll continue to work on it if anybody wants to stay to continue. But so for this, what I would do is when you think about shading, you're creating dimension. So you're either going to try to make the shape that you're looking at give it more shape. Like if you want to imagine that this is actually bulging out of, you know, from behind these, like if you imagine that these are straps that are around this, and this is maybe like something that's soft, but it's kind of bulging up. So in order to create that, to give that more of an effect, what I can do is just add a little bit of shading along the edges to show that that's receding. Where things are receding, it gets darker. Also, I'm imagining that these straps are creating a little bit of a shadow there. So I'm just going to put, this is a really soft, this is just pure graphite, and very soft. It's an 8B. So it's very soft pencil, and I'm just going to put that right along, just a little bit of pencil right along those edges. And then I'm just laying down a little bit of graphite. Now, if you're going to use a regular pencil, just softly, don't press too hard because you don't want the pencil to dent the paper. You don't want it to emboss into the paper, but just lightly lay down some graphite. And then I'm going to use the smudging tool. I think this is a shading stump, and it's designed for this. It's got kind of a sharp point, but there's no lead there. This is just paper that's ground up and then finally smushed together to create this hard papery stump. And I'm just gonna lightly, I don't want to push too hard because again, I want it to not press down my paper fibers, but I'm just gonna move that pigment a little bit, just create some shading. And I can move that graphite as far in as I want. I don't want it to go all the way in. Let me bring this closer. I don't want it to go all the way into the center because I want the center to be light and I want the dark to be right along where this, what I imagine as a strap, is going over my sea anemone or whatever I'm imagining it's going to be, or flower or whatever. So it's really, you make it whatever you want it to be. You can use a Q-tip if you don't have that, or you can roll up some paper, or even sometimes a cloth will work on your finger. So you can kind of smudge with different things. Alexa, dismiss alarm. Now, one thing I didn't do because I'm going to continue with it is I didn't erase my guiding lines yet. And when I go to erase them, it's going to damage my shading. So, but because I'm going to continue to work on it, I can't really erase them. So I'll either leave them or I'll just erase them. You know, I'm not worried about the ones that are over here so much. So I'll just leave those ones. Okay, so you can see it just gives it a little bit more dimension. It shows that this piece is on top of this piece, and there's a little bit of a shadow underneath it. And it also shows that this is rounded. There's got lighter in the middle because that's kind of bulging up, and then it's darker as it goes underneath that strap piece. So I'm just adding to the story. I can do the same thing here if I want to imagine that, for example, this piece is going underneath this piece. If this is, you know, woven through, then I can put a shadow right where where the one piece goes over the other piece. And then that makes it look like it's causing a shadow of it going underneath there. So it's just a way of, see how that looks like now it's popping up off the page and that this piece is going underneath there. It just helps tell the story how you want. Now you don't have to be you don't always have to be intentional where you put it. You can just add it random places and it's still going to just add some interesting dimension to it. So don't worry about it too much if you're not sure where to put shadow. You can just put some around the edges if you want, around the edge of the whole pattern. And even that will make it look like that's curving over a little bit, you know, like it's coming up in the middle and curving down at the edges. So it just gives it a little bit more dimension. Okay, I'm going to pause there. And I love doing the random selection because it's like a surprise. It's like a fun surprise of what my next thing is going to be. And I don't know, that's the way I like challenges like that. So did I finish? Oh, I didn't even finish this particular one. So this is the next step of that one. It looks like little cells to me. I'm going to use a real small tip for this one, for these, because I don't have a lot of space in there. It's pretty small. So I'm going to go to my 005 even. I want them to be pretty dainty. And I'm just going to do radiating lines around. I think this tip is getting, actually, it might be worn out. I might have to go to my, that's probably why you can't see any tip on it. It probably really is gone. I'm going to use my 01. I know I have another one somewhere here, but I don't want to find it. I think this one I used for one of my underwater, like to make little underwater features, like kind of like a coral. All right, and let's see. Is that the last step or? Oh, that was the last step. Okay, so that's that one. And let's see the next one. Ooh, I like that one. That one definitely I've used for underwater stuff. So that's cool. I think I'm just gonna put that right up in this corner. All right. So starting with the circles. Oh, there we go. Sometimes I'm surprised at the way the steps are, like the order of operations. I think, oh, I would, because I feel like a lot of them I could probably figure out, but I definitely wouldn't always pick the best route or the most efficient way of making it. I'm like, oh, that's much easier than I would have done. So I like to see the step outs because sometimes they make it much easier than I would have made it. And the key thing here is when you get to one of the bubbles, what I think of as bubbles, you just stop at one side and then continue on the other side. So the line is behind the bubble. I just realized that my camera worked this whole time and I don't know if I should say anything right now because I don't want to jinx it, but I'm so happy. And that's it. All right, next. That was, which one was that? I forgot to say the name of that one. That was called NIPA, N-I-P-A. This one's called Hollybaugh, H-O-L-L-I-B-A-U-G-H. And I think I'm going to put that one over here. And again, this one you stop when you get to the previous line, lift, and then continue, like it's behind the, like straw or whatever that is, the fiber. Ah, and then just dots. Let's see. Oh, this is a pretty small one. I think I'm gonna make this little, this over here, part of that pattern. This is just a tiny little triangle. All right, next. Oh, and that's done. Yeah, this one has a lot of variations where you can fill in different patterns inside these shapes. I love this one. Favorites. Okay. Random. Let's do this one's called Well. Ooh, that's cool. All right. I'm gonna put it. Put it over this one. All right, so these are going to go from one side of the circle and then curve around and out and to the corner. And then I like to do the same motion repeatedly. So I'm just going to do all of the ones that are going that direction and then rotate my page when I do other ones because it's a little easier. I'm assuming that they all do it the same thing. Hopefully. Let me make sure. Oh, no, they do a reverse thing, so I screwed up that one. And this is where I go, okay, well, I'll just have to. This is why it's good to look ahead, because see, this one goes this direction, but this one comes back this direction. But I was, so I'm gonna have to, I don't know if I can resolve that, but okay, I'm just gonna do these ones that I already did and then work with it. This, I don't have an eraser. Mine's gonna be different. It occurred to me after. Even just this pattern is kind of cool now. And there's probably a variation that's like this. So if not, I'm making my own pattern. Yeah, like that's really cool. It's kind of similar to this pattern. And now I'm going to try to do the pattern that originally was supposed to be doing on these lower ones that I hadn't touched yet. I'll just do it here. Let's see how that goes. Because now this next step is to go reverse. So it's from this side back towards that one. Alright. And then, okay, so then they do the same thing below. This makes these little like orchid looking, oops, sorry. I know these little orchid looking shapes. They're not orchid, I don't know, orchid's not the right word, but like a little flower. And then they turn into little flowers. Mine are just going to be going the same direction. So it looks like they're just little rice shapes. You know what? I might just leave mine how it is. I'm calling creative license because I kind of like this pattern. And as much as I like this, I think it's going to lose itself. It's such a small area. So I think I'm going to stick to what I had because I kind of did it wrong, or quote unquote wrong, but there are no mistakes. So it's right. It's the way it's meant to be. That's what we're going to say about that. But I want to show you guys in case you want to keep following. So these little pinwheels. So it's amazing that what can start off looking like almost like a basket can turn into little things. I'm just leaving that up in case you guys want to have a little more time with it. And then looks like now these are open, and then the ones then when they go to the corner, they're closed. Moving on. This is called Kiko. And that's almost kind of baskety too. I'm going to put that over here. Let's see. So it's basically I'm going to be creating strips. So I'm going to start the strip in the middle over here. 4 lines. And then 2 lines across. Oh, 3 lines of no, 4 lines. So it's 4 lines this. Okay, sorry, 4 lines this way, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 lines going that.
It's like a basket weave.
Yeah. And
I like it.
Yeah, and it's just 4 lines going one direction and then 4 lines going across. And then 4 lines, and the lines connect to the one piece that is of the other lines.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to say that.
It looks good. Are you still using the generator, or are you just like randomly picking it?
No, I'm using the random option.
Ooh.
So I'm not selecting any of these. Just seeing what the universe wants me to do.
It wants you to weave a basket.
Yeah, lots of
Love it.
that turned into, well, this one turned into a basket that wasn't supposed to be, but okay. And then you just continue with the opposite direction alongside of it.
I think you've taught that one to me before.
That's
I feel
quite
like
possible.
I think I've learned that one from you.
Could be. Uh-oh.
What's it called again?
How did I do that?
What happened?
Oh, I just did the same direction. It's called Kiko.
Kiko. It does sound familiar.
Oh, it's very possible. Very, very possible. Not that I would remember specifically, but but I don't remember anything, so
Well, it's because you taught so many classes.
no. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's an easy, I'm always amazed at how something that looks so challenging is, is really so easy to do.
I know, especially when they give you the steps like that.
Yeah, I love that.
And then it just because when you see it, sometimes it's just so overwhelming. You think, where do I even start?
Exactly.
And once it gives you a start, then it just all comes together and you're like, oh, okay.
That's not so bad. I'm afraid of that.
I know, but it's just the start. It's just so intimidating.
Yeah.
When you see it at first.
Exactly. And it's like secrets revealed. It's sort of like magic tricks. It's like, oh, once you know how to do the trick, it's not so, it's not so intimidating. I think it's easier to do all the same direction first, like in a row,
Uh-huh.
because having to switch the pen direction every time. See, then you learn ways to be more efficient about it. I think it's cool because you start to break down shapes, you know, you start to really learn shapes that, you know, that are around you. It's like, oh, that's what that's. Because really, everything's made out of a few simple basic shapes. It's just a matter of how big, how long the line is, or, okay, so there's that one. That's kind of cool. I think that's,
That is really cool.
I like that one. I think that's, yeah.
You could make stickers out of those, out of those patterns.
You can make stickers out of the whole Zentangle.
I did find somebody that was willing to talk to me about the whole process, like a sticker owner.
Oh, wonderful.
And then I was like, asked her, like, hey, so do you ever get paranoid that someone's going to take these ideas and then like start their own business and it's going to take away business from you? But she was really cool. She was just, you know, believed in empowering women.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
yeah, so she was like, yeah, whatever you need to know, ask me. She told me what kind of paper she uses, what kind of printer she
Oh
uses.
my gosh, that's awesome.
I know, I was like, really, because remember you and I were just talking about that?
Yeah.
About nobody wants to reveal their secrets, but she was so sweet. And I was just like, thank you.
Yeah.
Send me a video. I'll send it a clip to you of like everything, like from the paper to the printer to like the shipping, like how she did the shipping.
Okay, cool. Who is it? Is it someone I might know?
They're called the sticker something. I think it's called a sticker guru. I found them on TikTok.
Okay. All right. Now I have to remember. Hold on a second. Sometimes I back up. Okay, so the lines first, then the V. Okay, lines and then V. Sorry.
Ooh, I like that one too.
I do too.
That's like a snake, like that could be like a
Uh-huh.
snake pattern.
Yeah, or like a dragon scale.
Yeah, yeah.
The lines and then the V. Lines and then V. Just to back up, so the side lines and then add the V,
Mm-hmm.
and just keep going down. And then I'm assuming, yep, we just keep doing it.
Nice.
Okay, so I'm going back to the beginning. I think it was just,
What's the name of that one?
this one's called Blit, B-L-I-T.
Ooh, I like it.
I know, I do too. I do too. Okay, this one I don't really.
I'm gonna do another snake series, so that's really that really come in handy. I like it. It does look like dragon scales.
Yeah, it's pretty. Oh shoot! See, that's what I did. I forgot the.
Is me talking to you messing you up?
But I have to do it in the order.
I'm sorry. I'm
No, that's
sorry.
okay. No, it's okay. This is just one of those patterns that I actually do have to think about because it has to do with order of operation.
Yeah.
And I know that about myself, like I'm always, I mess up that. Okay, so I have to do the side. I literally have to talk myself through it sometimes. Side, side, middle, side, side, middle. Okay. Yeah, that's a cool one.
Ooh, it's pretty.
I like it. Okay, I think I got all my areas filled in.
I love it. It looks really good.
Cool. Now I can do more shading. I think sometimes what I'll do is I'll go in and if there are dividers that I want to keep, like if I want to have it be not a pencil, but actually be like a marker, I'll go in and draw in my divider mark,
Mhm.
following the string.
What size pen do you go in when you do that?
This is the 05,
Nice.
but I don't know. It varies. I'm not even sure if I want to have lines.
I like it the way it is right now.
Line there. Like this one. This might be too thick, actually. Sometimes I'll just use it to clean up the edge because sometimes I don't, it's kind of rough. So I just,
Uh-huh.
but you can also just do shading.
Yeah, that's true.
So it doesn't have to be. So
Shauna,
yeah.
I found another app because the one you showed us costs $4 and I'm cheap.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's called Raffles. Art Raffle. It's called Art Raffle, RAFFLE.
Okay, art raffle.
Yeah, and it randomly chooses 8 patterns for you, and that's like your deck. And
Oh,
you can switch it out if you don't like one. And if you flip one over, it tells you like who designed it and a little bit about the pattern and how you can use it.
oh, cool.
And it shows you how to draw it, like the different steps. And then it also shows how you might shade it as well. It also gives you a video.
Oh, nice. I'll check it out. I'll share that next time.
Mm-hmm.
Art raffle. Okay, I wrote it down. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know I got my, and I don't remember if I paid for it. I've had this for like probably 6 years. I wasn't even sure. I looked at it today to see if it was still available, but it still was working for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to see that they had it available on the iOS, the Apple stuff.
Yes.
App. But but I've had it so long, I don't even remember if I paid.
Mhm. Yeah, it's possible that it was free.
Right,
yeah.
could have been free when I got it because I got
Mhm.
it probably as a beta.
And then you can save your decks too if you like.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. I like that because I do enjoy the random. I feel like it's like a surprise. It's like I'm excited to see what the next, pattern's going to be. And to me, it is more relaxing. It's like I don't have to think about what's gonna look good. Like sometimes I really want to like get in. Once I get started, I might kind of get into the flow and be like, okay, I want something really geometrical here. But oftentimes I just want to not think and just relax. And that's part of what this is about. So I love to be able to do that's the full relaxation mode, there's no thinking required, required. And I think too much in my normal day.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
As you know from my response this morning. I'm like, okay. So it was like something like she's talking about her. Is it okay if I share a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
So she sent me a message. It's like I said, how are you feeling? And I'm upgraded from horrible to terrible or terrible. Whatever. And I'm like, okay, so upgrading in a storm, it means the storm is worse. So does that mean your health is worse and it's upgraded, or is it upgraded in health and that you're better? And then it's terrible, worse than horrible, or like this is my brain. It goes on every pathway, and I'm like, I don't know what she's saying here.
That is so funny because out of all the people that I sent that to, you're the only person that like questioned it. And I was like, but then when you did, it totally makes sense because I'm like, oh my God, I could totally understand that. I knew where you were coming from. I was like,
it's sort of like it's all uphill or it's all downhill. Well, both of those, both those mean the same thing and opposites too, just depending on the context. So I'm like,
exactly.
I don't know. I don't know whether to say yay. And then if you were sicker, it'd be like, why are you saying yay when I'm feeling sick?
Oh my gosh, you're so funny.
So I was like, I better check in before I respond because I don't know how to respond to that.
Oh my God, that made me laugh when I saw that. I was like, only Shauna.
I know. I did. Welcome to my brain.
No, your analytical mind.
I have a very analytical mind. It's on overdrive sometimes.
But it's good because you're right. That's totally true. Like I never even have thought that. Like
that's why I need this to take my mind out of my mind.
exactly.
And that's why it's like, you know what, if I make a quote unquote mistake, it's like, you know what, I can't erase it. So I don't even have to worry about it. I just have to move on. So not a problem.
And I worked on my art project for that my other class. And every time like it's not turning out right, like I'm in the middle of it, I always think of your words. You're like, it's always gonna look like that until you finish it. And I'm just like, you just gotta keep pushing forward. Because I was in the middle of something. I was like, this is not coming out right.
It's not done till it's done.
Exactly. And that's just how your mind works. And I love that.
Well, that comes from experience because I remember when I was first doing watercolors, I was taking some community ed watercolor. And I remember wanting it to always look done. Like every step of the way, I wanted it to look like what I was trying to get to. And I'm like, that is not how watercolor works. And you have to let go of that. And it wasn't until I got to like watch the teacher's process and see like, oh, that doesn't look like anything yet either. It's okay if mine doesn't look like anything yet. It's not ready. It's not ready yet.
And the same way, it's like mine, but doesn't always look finished until you put the line work in. So like by line, it starts coming together. And I'm like, okay, now I'm calming down.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now it's looking like
Part
something.
where you're over the hump.
Yeah, exactly. But it's your words that always like went through my head
Aw,
that helped me get through it.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad I could help.
I was gonna ask you to test out some of my coloring pages to see what you thought of them if
Yes.
they were too small, but then you're so busy. I don't want to intrude on your time.
No, give me, let me try it.
Cause I'm like,
I want to do your coloring pages because they're going to be amazing. And I can say, I helped, her.
I'm gonna
I
dedicate my
beta
first,
tested that.
I'm dedicating my first one to you.
Yay. Aw. You know, I find especially like doodle, like, because I'm not, you know, I don't have the dexterity, like you have such good precision, and so for me, I have to be really patient about, okay, I can clean it up in the end. Like right now, I can clean up all my little loose tails and all the things that go wild.
Uh-huh.
Little strings. And then in the end, it's like, oh, it came together. It's not. You know, it's kind of like the neurographic art too, where it starts off just looking like scribbles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Play
I
with it,
like that. That's a good one.
and you know, give it some TLC and patience.
Yep.
It comes together. You just have to have faith and let it be what it is.
You're missing something on that though. On your card there.
My initials.
Yes, and your date.
Well, I have to decide. Okay, so this is the stage where you decide
Yeah.
what is up and what is down.
When it's up, then it's up.
I feel no. No. I think this is up because this looks like it's growing. And I feel like that needs to grow up towards the sun.
I like that too. I like it too.
So
And I like how the on the like the flower one looks like a compass. You know, like it's giving you direction.
oh, yeah.
And then the next to it, it looks like billowy flags on a like a ship.
Oh,
You know?
these ones.
No, the ones next to it, right there, they look like flags.
Oh,
So it looks like a compass and a flag.
it's
Looks
very
cool.
nautical.
Yeah.
It's like there's bubbles and seaweed and
Yes.
all sorts of, and then this looks a little bit like coral. So yeah, I like the nautical. You know me, that's my jam. I turn everything into nautical, and this was random, so I can't even blame me.
I love it.
All right, so I'm gonna put my funky initials,
I love it.
22. There we go. Thank you everyone for joining me for another episode of Healing Art After Hours. Please like, subscribe, and share if you find this content helpful. Thank you, and as always, happy creating.